The whole project took upward to 3, maybe over 3 years. We were very careful in how we approached it, especially since neither Daniel nor I are native. And so the process that I took was to first, at the University of North Dakota, first contact, after thinking about this project and how we could work with this project using both portraiture and narrative. We talked to the American Indian Studies program here on campus, and we also talked to the American Indian Student Services people. We wanted to make sure this was something that was appropriate for us to do, something that was important, and something they could support. When I listened to the stories, I tried to follow the emotions when I set the type and decided on the graphic elements. What should be backwards? What should be set at diagonal? What should be loud, so big, bold type? What they told us in more of a whisper, smaller type. Sometimes it curved around. So what you see on the broad side, and what was important to me, was that people had to work to get into the stories. I had been asked before by other museums if could I just provide the text. And my answer was always no, because that's the whole point. You have to work as hard to read the story as the people had to work to tell the story. What I would hope, I guess, is that it would find a broader audience, not just the audiences that have come to a major metropolitan museum, for example, to view the work, but audiences perhaps in smaller towns. And especially given today's climate, socially, politically, I think that maybe it's time for those kind of stories to be put out in a different way.
The very first interview we did was of a woman who, among many other issues going on in her life, her 15-year-old son had died 3 months before. And that woman was particularly nervous about the impact of what she was going to say on herself and on us, and really generous in sharing that story and her feelings. I mean, her son had just died of meningitis. He was sick for a couple of weeks. He received really bad health care on the reservation, probably shouldn't have died. So she was nervous, or she was more reserved in the beginning and opened up. So Jesse Taken Alive's portrait is a portrait of an older man. And if you look at it quickly, it's got 3 colors: the color of the paper, this kind of light blue-gray color that's on the face and on some words, and a dark black color behind the head that kind of projects the head forward. But then if you look again, there's a 4th color, and that color is almost exactly as the color of the paper. And the reason was because Jesse's text, the text that I included in the portrait, he's talking about when he was a child, he was taken away from his family, brought to a boarding school, hours and hours away, not allowed to go home. At the boarding school, there were 1 or 2 or 3 other children, and he was 9 or 10, who spoke his language, and all the other children spoke other languages. They were told not to use their native language, only to speak in English. There was a U.S. government program in collaboration with a lot of the religious organizations in the United States to de-Indianize the Indian communities. And that big part of that was to take them away from their families at a young age so that they didn't learn Indian customs, and to remove their use of the Indian language, native language, so that they would use English. Jesse Taken Alive was taken to one of these boarding schools, and his testimony to us, the part that I included in the portrait, is all about when he got there and he couldn't speak his own language and he didn't know English. He felt like he was suffocating. He could only speak to a couple people, but only at night when nobody was looking. So I drew the words as if they were kind of a noose around his neck. And then half of the words you can't see unless you really look closely. And that's a visual metaphor for having your words not be heard and for having your voice be muffled. You know, what I hope will happen as this travels through Texas is that more people will see the exhibition, read the words, understand a little bit about the issues facing Native Americans that they might not have thought about, form a sense of community with them, form a sense of common purpose. Certainly, this country could use as much common purpose as we possibly can get. And I think that this portfolio can only help in building that common purpose.